All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked out our program before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Today, we have an interview for you, and on the studio line is I actually should have. I want to always make positively sure. I'm gonna give a stab at your name. It's Diana Colleen. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I always, because sometimes, these days you can say Steve Smith and they say, no, it's Steve Smythe. So I always ask. Just to be sure. And I neglected to do that today. This is going to be an interesting one. Diana, I did some, research for the program on her, and she has some views that are different. I'll put it that way. They're different. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She is an award-winning speculative fiction author who believes stories can do more than entertain. They can challenge the systems we live in and spark conversations we're often too afraid to have. Her debut novel, They Could Be Saviors, is built around one provocative question. What if the only way to save the planet was to kidnap the billionaires, destroying it? Okay. And obviously, let me just say this up front. I'm sure, you have different views than I do. And then regular listeners to the program might say, well, what is this? That's okay. That's okay. And I got to tell you, your views about billionaires are not necessarily left. There's a lot of conservatives who are very much concerned about the concentration of power at the top. Okay. I don't think that is an exclusively a liberal issue as it once was at one time. I think there's a lot of people that are concerned about that. I kind of believe that, is in terms of capitalism and socialism, we really need a mix of both.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's something that we don't hear. It's either one or the other.
Yeah.
You're either a fascist or, a communist.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about what speculative fiction is. I got to tell you, I'm not too familiar with that term.
It's basically any kind of fiction that has a what if question. So it's a big umbrella. It covers sci-fi, fantasy, and cli-fi, which is what I write. So dystopian also falls into that. It's usually a lot of it is either like alternate reality or near future or far future, but it's always a what if question.
Okay. So there's like a premise that you have to build on is kind of,
yeah.
And that's kind of how you describe, I know, going through some of your notes here, how does speculative fiction reflect and reshape the world that we're living in? How does that change a story in a way that people are going to identify with it more?
Well, I feel like a lot of speculative fiction is very dystopian, and it shows us broken futures. So, like if you look at Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale, you look at 1984, Animal Farm, those are all speculative fiction, and I almost feel like because those are the only stories of our future that we've really been shown, that we've almost manifested this mess that we're in. Like we read these books and we're like, well, that would be terrible. And here we are living these stories. And I feel like we should, as authors, present some hope. Present stories that don't just show broken futures. So my book is actually a very hopeful speculative novel. I believe that once you read it, you'll start thinking about things differently. And like I think that a lot of people have a very fatalistic view of our future, especially when it comes to climate change and billionaires. They've kind of given up because they feel like nothing can be done. So why even bother trying? And I think that's really sad. Like we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know who's going to invent what tomorrow. Something massive could change everything in a blink of an eye. So I want to write stories that people can connect to and go, something small might actually turn into something big. And the future isn't predetermined.
Mm-hmm.
We can actually make a difference if everybody has a part to play.
Okay, that's fair enough. I know that a lot of people have fatalistic notions. I've had a lot of people tell me within the last year, I feel that something bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't necessarily think that climate change is the top threat. I mean, without getting into debate about how serious it is.
Yeah, sure.
I probably one of the things that I worry about is, let's say, with nuclear devices. I don't think the odds of a recognized state sending a missile our way is likely, but there's a lot of lone wolves out there, and the nuclear technology is out of the bottle. And it's not as exclusive as it was after World War II. There's a lot of people got their hands on that technology, and it would really be at the top of any terrorist's wish list.
Right.
To ignite a detonation somewhere in the Western world, and the United States would be the crown jewel if they could pull it off. So that type of thing is, I think, the human element of disaster is probably much more prevalent than a natural one. Although I don't rule anything out. How do you cope with? I'm sure you get told the same thing. A lot of people have, something bad's going to happen. We hear a lot about what's called a black swan event. Do you have that feeling? Do you have that foreboding about the future?
Some days, yes. I think to be human, I think most of us do feel that, especially like you were saying in the last year. I started writing this book over 4 years ago, so the things that are happening today, weren't happening when I wrote the book. So at that time, I thought that billionaires and climate change were the big things that needed to be focused on. And I think the billionaire thing is still very much something that needs to be focused on. Billionaires are part of why this whole nuclear threat is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because I got to tell you, I'm worried about the concentration of wealth, and it's much more so around the world than it was during the 1960s. Like, for example, I read some statistics that said the concentration of wealth in the 1960s, for example, was in like 30 to 40% of the population. Now it's single digits.
Yeah.
With that being said, I don't know that I villainize billionaires a lot like some of the other people do, and I'll get into why. But before I do that, I want you to be able to state your case uninterrupted. What's the deal with the billionaires? And like I said, you're not alone in this. What is it that they're doing?
Oh my gosh, they're doing so many things, but let me come back to what you were saying about villains. So, when I started writing this book, I was firmly in the villains camp. So I believe there are basically two camps. You think billionaires are villains, or you think they're heroes. And I was firmly in the villains camp. Mm-hmm. And so when I started writing the book, I really thought that I was going to write them as villains, that they were evil. And as I wrote the book, I realized there's a difference between evil and immoral. And I realized that they are human beings. And I wrote them as human beings. And the difference between evil and immoral is the humanity part. So evil sort of suggests that something is unnatural and unchangeable, whereas immoral is very human and can be changed. Okay. So that's how I've written them, that they are human beings who just need to become aware of what they're doing.
Interesting. Okay. Would you say then, from the sake of immorality, that they all have, let's say, a selfish streak or some sort of immorality to them? Kind of like a James Bond villain. Oh, that's actually evil, but that's a bad example. But you know what I mean? They're just immoral.
Yeah.
They're sitting on a pile of money and they don't care about anybody else.
So the way I frame it is actually as pathology. So I want people to start talking about billionaireism. So it's the pathology of a mental illness. So we've all seen the show Hoarders on TV, and we can see that that is a mental illness, and that mental illness affects the person who has it and their family, but it doesn't typically spill out into society. I believe billionaires hoard at an extreme that affects every single person on the planet and the planet itself. And I believe it's a mental illness that can be treated.
Okay. So is there such a thing as a good billionaire?
So I actually have met a billionaire who was a very kind person. I really liked him. I liked his wife. I got to know them quite well. They were regular customers at a restaurant I worked at. I still think they're immoral. I don't believe that you can have that. You can have that kind of wealth and power and be a moral person while there is still so much suffering in the world.
Yeah, I certainly understand that position, and it's not without merit. And here again, there's a lot of people across all ideologies that are 100% on board with this. There are some good attributes, and I'm from Ohio. As a matter of fact, the William McKinley Monument, who was president in the late 1800s, assassinated at the early part of the 1900s. He was kind of like the Ronald Reagan of his time. And big business, this was like, Carnegie, JP Morgan, all those kind of folks. That was something new. Wealth and business on that level was something new, probably not only in the history of the United States, but in the history of the world. And I mean, this what was the forerunner of what corporations were going to become. And oddly enough, after his assassination, the pendulum swung the other way. When Roosevelt, this would have been Teddy, came in, he thought that they were getting too much power, and the roots of the modern progressive movement is there when you talked about workers' rights and getting the proper rest and the proper pay and all that stuff. That's there was that real wide pendulum swing there.
Right.
Looking back on it historically, I will say this: I think billionaires do some good things. For one thing, some of the names I mentioned, Carnegie, Rockefeller, JP Morgan of that era, and more recently, Henry Ford. And he didn't, I know this whole thing about what he did was he made cars affordable. And it wasn't just the assembly line, it was supply chain. It was getting all that organized so that everybody had made sure they had the supplies that they needed to do their part of the car. And this was revolutionary, and it really drastically brought the price of cars down, and it changed the world. Yeah, you could make the same argument about Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. A lot of the technology that we have today would not exist without them. Elon Musk was told when he approached NASA that reusable rockets and all that weren't feasible, and I've heard people say that was political because all the congressmen had in their districts things about building rockets. So they didn't want one that was reusable, right? Electric cars. One of the very hard things about starting a car company is that existing car companies have a fleet that needs maintained. So, like if you're Ford, there's who knows how many vehicles out there that need brakes, that need this and that and the other thing. When you start a new car company, you don't have an existing fleet, so the cars are going to be expensive. Right. And Elon Musk here again was told it couldn't be done. He did it with autonomy. Okay, so that's where his little niche was. And if you don't have these people that defy conventional wisdom, everything stays the same. And there's got to be somebody that comes along and says, "Hey, I can do this, and I can make money at it." And if you don't have that opening, if you don't have that person that can come along and say, "No, we don't need to make faster horses. We got this machine here that will work." If you don't have that person that comes along and does that at some point, I think that's one of the things that makes the United States unique, because of the fact that we have such a wide open economy that somebody with a great idea can come along and do that. Now, the only thing I would say to criticize myself is because you have so many corporations now that have so much power, a lot of times they can keep the lid on new ideas. Okay, but somebody like Elon Musk and Henry Ford, those people were necessary for the evolution of our society. Okay, what would you say to what would be your response to that?
I agree. Like, I am not trying to shut down innovation, but I believe the incentives are wrong. And I don't believe that billionaires are required for the innovation. You like having $1 billion shouldn't be the incentive to innovate. You know, and creating jobs and creating these things, like this technology that we're using to have this conversation wouldn't exist. And yeah, all of these amazing things that we have are because of these types of people. But creating jobs and creating things isn't necessarily creating net good if supply chains exploit people and ecosystems. So, um, people like to say every single life is important, but I
Mhm.
don't think people actually truly believe that. And if they did, we would not allow for the suffering that is involved in bringing these things into our lives.
Okay. What would be the incentive? And I'm only asking that. And here again, I'm playing devil's advocate. I don't want you to think I'm challenging you too much.
No, no, that's okay.
But historically, like some of the things I just mentioned, better cars, better automobiles, airplanes, all these kind of better this and that. Almost none of them came from individual countries. The countries, very, very little development. And around the world, it's usually an individual somewhere who's got this idea.
Sure.
And sometimes they
Sure.
get killed trying to build something that'll fly.
Yeah.
But and they not only want to innovate, but they do want to get compensated for it. Okay,
Well,
and I think here's the reason I don't. Let me just I'll throw this back to you. I promise.
sure.
I don't like to paint all billionaires in the set. Like, for example, nothing against Steve Bezos. I'm the guy from Amazon. He's a merchandiser, and he got in at the right place at the right time with the right idea.
Yeah.
And he's just basically taking things from here and taking them to there and taking a percentage. I don't, and here again, and that's fine. I'm not saying it's illegal. There's anything wrong with it. I don't know that Bezos is the type of person that's changing the world. I would have to say Elon Musk, yes. Steve Jobs, yes.
Yeah.
So they're not all painted, and if I had that kind of success to have an Amazon, I would pay my people what they're worth. Okay. I would. And I think there's a problem with $1 billion companies having people work that can barely make a living. I think that is an issue. Okay.
Yes.
And so here again, I just don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to innovators and people who want to be compensated for that innovation. Okay. Look, so go ahead and take it.
But yeah, I have absolutely no objection to people becoming rich. But there has to be a line. There has to be something in place in our systems that don't allow for this accumulation at the top, and what comes with that wealth is power. And we've all seen how the wealth is actually power, and that's why these people want the wealth, is so that they have the power. And that's what I have a problem with. I don't think that most people can really conceptualize the difference between 1 million and 1 billion. So a million, if money was time, 1 million seconds is 11 days. Do you know how much 1 billion seconds is?
Well, I know how many millions are in 100 billion, so in a billion. So you have 10 sets of 100 million. So what would that be?
So it's roughly somewhere between 31 and 32 years.
Okay.
So if you keep that in mind, right? And now Elon Musk is set to be a trillionaire. That's 32,000 years. There is no reason for one individual to have that much power and wealth. I'm totally okay with there being rich people and having incentives to work and to innovate, but not at the expense of the rest of humanity. So we need to have systems in place where, like an idea would be a maximum wage. You can make as much money as you possibly can if every single person below you on the entire supply chain is making a certain percentage of what you're making. Why is that so hard?
Yeah, it is. I now that part I agree with. It's hard to when you're talking about immoral versus evil. When it comes to morality, it's hard to legislate morality.
Yes. Yes.
Because one person's barometer in terms of what's moral and what isn't is different.
Sure.
I do in the case of Elon Musk, and here again, I would love to be sitting in his shoes, and I'm just saying that he doesn't mean he has that in cash. Okay, he's got
right.
He's got the all the companies that have a certain value.
Right.
With that being said, though, here again to play devil's advocate, there's a lot of people who, and I've known them, who have started a business and risked losing everything. So you could say that if someone attains that level, okay, it's high risk, high reward. They took the high risk. And especially when you're buying a company for X $1 million. And I got to say, I've known some people who have had $1 million businesses. They're not filthy rich. $1 million is a relatively, by today's standards, a moderate amount of money.
Right.
And some of these people who had $1 million companies were only taking home maybe $125,000, $130,000 a year. Okay, for their own personal use. And not that that's a small amount either, but people envision them, they got $1 million company, they must be having yachts and stuff. And that's not necessarily the case at all, because they got employees, they got overhead, they got, factory, whatever.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, what would incentivize somebody taking a risk that could possibly wipe them out financially if they know that there's going to be a block, there's going to be a ceiling that they're going to hit?
It still comes back to what is enough for me. Like we don't talk about that, right? Like we don't talk about what is enough for one human being. And for me, enough is when having more does not contribute to your more to your well-being, and having more detracts from other people's well-being.
Okay. Is it a zero sum though? Is it always a zero sum? Because you seem to be making the case that billionaires are taking the resources.
Yes.
So is it you're implying then that there is a zero sum? The more that one person has, it has to be at the expense of a group of people.
I don't think it has to be, but that is the system we live in. Yes.
Yeah.
The system as it is right now. Yes. It is zero sum. I mean, the inequality gap in this country has just blown up in the last 40 years, right? And you look back and see where it started. It started with Reaganomics. It started with trickle-down economics. That does not work. And I am the kind of person who cares about everybody. I care about the people sleeping in tents in the park down the street from me. And I don't understand the people who don't care about those people.
No, I agree. And I care about them too. I very much so. I do a lot of work for nonprofits, and I'm very much involved in that part of our community. With homelessness in general, that's another thing where you have the right and the left, their talking points. If you listen to a conservative, these people just need to go out and get a job. And if you listen to the people on the left, it's because all these greedy landlords. It's their problem. And the fact of the matter is, these are factors, but they're not really what's going on. I've been around a significant number of homeless people, and yes, there's addiction, there's mental illness in those communities to be sure. But what you have, though, what the real thing is that I've noticed is there's a local pantry kitchen that does a homeless hot meal once a week, and I've been there on numerous occasions, and it's almost like watching children, and they simply do not have the capacity to get by in a modern society. And I've heard people shout things at them like, "Hey, McDonald's is hiring." They just don't get it. These people need what amounts to adult daycare. A lot of times their own families have taken advantage of them. What little resources they had when they got older were taken from them. They can't manage their appointments. They can't manage their doctor's appointments. They can't manage their prescriptions. It's a much more complex problem.
Absolutely.
And it's not going to be cheap to fix.
No, it's not. Definitely not.
Yes. So I understand that here again, these problems aren't one side versus the other. There's a lot of nuance with these problems.
Yeah.
So I'm on board with that. I absolutely agree that in the richest, for the time being, the United States is the richest country in the world. It may not be for much longer, but there's no reason that somebody should be dying in the street from lack of health care when there's absolutely no reason that should be happening. I am with you on that. Okay. So how do you implement a system? Because here's the thing. As much as we want to zero in on billionaires, and I totally agree, like I said, the concentration of wealth now is much higher than it's ever been at the top. With that being said, the rich still, whether it be through the companies that they own or property taxes or whatever, a lot of them don't have income tax because their companies pay all their bills. I mean, I could work for nothing too if my company, whether it be whatever means, like, for example, studies just came out with Mondami in New York, and he wants to, really hit the rich. And and the studies have shown the rich are already carrying the heaviest burden there. So there comes a point where you have more people in the wagon than are pulling it. Okay. So how do we make sure that we don't let people die in the streets from not having health care to having a system where everybody is going to hitch a ride? And I'll tell you, my opinion on this is there's a general wisdom with most companies that 10% of the employees do most of the work.
Right. Yeah. The Pareto principle, the 80-20. Yeah.
That's absolutely right. And so when you hear like Mondami and all these other people talking about the collective isn't going to do anything. Okay. That's just being straight up honest. 10% of them are, the rest of them are going to hitch a ride.
Right.
So how do you manage that? That's the problem. I agree that we can't have people dying in the street. But how do you appropriately manage those situations where you don't have, we're already at 49% of the people in the United States rely on government subsidies. Now, some of them have earned it with Social Security and all that. But if you figure we're over 300 million people, that's 150 million people that aren't doing anything.
Right.
So how do you approach that? There's only so many rich people out there.
So obviously I don't have all of the answers. If I did, I'd be God. Right. But I truly believe that the systems are never going to change if the people who benefit from them are in power. So, and that's exactly what has happened right now, is that all of the systems are benefiting the people at the top. Yeah. And those systems are not going to change because the people at the top want to stay at the top. So I believe in a revolution. Reform comes after revolution. And I'm not saying like pick up your guns, that kind of revolution. I believe in a revolution of consciousness.
Yes.
That the narrative has to change, that we have to stop idolizing billionaires. We have to stop discounting other people's lives and seeing the I believe society as a whole, humanity as a whole, suffers from disconnection.
Yeah.
So we are disconnected from the rest of humanity. We're disconnected from nature, and we've become disconnected from ourselves. And so in my book, I talk about psychedelic drugs.
Okay. That's fun.
Psychedelic therapy, to be specific.
Okay.
That is my way of changing the world. I believe that if enough people go through psychedelic assisted therapy, they will find the connection. They will find the connection to themselves, to humanity, and to nature, and that will begin to solve the problem.
Okay. Just to clarify, you're talking about a controlled medical situation. You're not talking about dropping LSD or anything like that. Is that correct? Okay.
Right. I'm not against just having a psychedelic experience on your own, but there is a very big difference between that and psychedelic assisted therapy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. With that, all that being said, I do agree. I don't know much about the psychedelic approach. I can tell you that me personally, I'm very, very resistant to putting anything in your body that's going to alter the way you think. I don't drink. I don't, do drugs of any kind. In Ohio, we've been decimated with addiction here. And a lot of it is, let me speak to while we're talking about it, let me speak to the stigma. This isn't a choice. People just decided I'm going to go ruin my life. It doesn't quite happen that way. For example, heroin is 70-80%. A lot of the people here in Ohio anyway, have had some sort of a very serious child abuse situation. It's that high. So a lot of times they're self-medicating. A lot of times they come from family situations where they're indoctrinated into a certain lifestyle. So there's a lot going wrong. And then, of course, the overprescribing of painkillers during the 1990s and all that was a precursor to a lot of this. Yeah. So it's more complicated than just jumping out and deciding I'm going to party myself into addiction. I mean, I'm sure here again, I'm sure in a country of 300 some odd billion people it happens, but that's not the path to addiction here in Ohio. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I kind of have this knee jerk reaction. And I know I go against the grain here when I say this, but the idea that marijuana, and I'll just throw this out there, isn't a gateway drug. I'm going to say that's changing because there's strains of marijuana right now that did not exist during the 1960s and the 1970s. I mean, there's marijuana out there that'll knock you on your rear end. So I think I'm always very careful about that. But I understand in a clinical situation, and there's just like with marijuana, it has medicinal purposes, Parkinson's and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It just in the right measure and with the right guidance. Yes. So barring some sort of an awakening like that, what would cause a moral awakening? What would cause? And I know that's tough because, like I said, it's hard to legislate morality. And I'll tell you, I'm not. Let me just throw this out there, and then I'll hand this to you. I'm not a big religious person. Okay, I'm not one of these people that's a Bible thumper. However, as someone who's old enough, I can remember the Catholic parishes and things like that in my neighborhood growing up during the 1970s. And when somebody had a death in the family, something like that, there was this community that came together and helped that person. And there was a certain moral code that people had put into them, instilled to them about helping other people and all that were in the presence of these churches. Now, for the most part, those parishes have gone away. All the old school Italian parishes and Polish parishes and all this other stuff, those are all gone now. They're all gone. And nothing has replaced them. And everybody is very isolated now. They'll talk to somebody on the other side of the world on their phone or tweet at them, but they won't know the name of their next door neighbor.
Yep.
Okay. So the sense of humanity that you're talking about is pretty far out there now for a lot of people. It's left.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you get that message across?
Well, I mean, I believe that technology has created this disconnection, right? From each other and from nature. So it's the screens that are killing us, really. And I don't know what the answer is as far as bringing back community and that sense of belonging, and that's just it too. It's the sense of belonging. People don't have that anymore with anything, and I believe that is one of the main causes of the downfall of society.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I don't know what the answer is. I was cheering last week when Meta had that the civil case against them.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that that might be the downfall of social media, because I believe social media has caused all kinds of problems for us. That whole disconnection and the depression that it causes young people, and it's just not real, like it.
I know. I know.
I don't know what the answer is.
I would agree with you on that. A lot of my conservative friends are against me on this when I say that, because they said, "Oh, it's the parents' fault. Look, they give those phones to their kids when they're 8 years old," and you know what? That's true. That is true. However, it's been well documented that the patterns and the psychology and the reward system that was put into those apps was targeted at kids.
And it's a drug. It acts the same way as drugs on your brain.
And it was well documented. Those companies knew it. And and that's, if you really listen to the details of the case, it's more than just, the parents weren't watching and the kid picked up the phone. It didn't happen like that. They were lured in.
Yeah.
They were absolutely lured in. I know the case was, Meta was one of them. And I think Google was another one that was a partial one.
Yeah.
I don't see, not to defend Elon Musk, I don't see X in quite in that, because that's almost all adults bitching at each other. That's basically. But go ahead. Tell me about it.
No, I just I can't give any of the points, but John Oliver did a really great segment on Elon Musk and Twitter. He still calls it Twitter.
Yeah.
But I highly recommend everyone watch that, because X is really doing a number on us.
Okay. That's fine. And that's fine. I wouldn't say that any of these things are great things, but I don't know that targeting really young kids is on that list. Now, there might be other things. With the Meta and the provocative pictures of young girls on like Instagram and all that, changing their body images, selling them makeup, all that stuff, making them feel bad about themselves when they don't look that way. I could go on and on with this. I don't think there's any question about that. I have a lot of beefs with that particular billionaire. I won't say the meta guy, the lizard. Somebody said, and they got criticized for this. They said it looks like if you shot him, the batteries would fall out. And I'm not talking about violence here, but I'm just saying he doesn't seem human. Okay,
right?
That's the point of that joke. It's not talking about violence. But anyway, I'm not. He seems very inhuman. I think Mark Zuckerberg is about as lizard-like as you can get. Let's go back to Jeff Bezos or one of those. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, and you kind of have this thing, is something you're willing to talk about. If you could talk to Jeff Bezos, and you could talk to some billionaire of that type, whether it be Elon Musk or whatever, what would you like to talk to them about? What would you want to say to them about what's going on?
I would want to ask them what they actually want their legacy to be and why. So my book is called They Could Be Saviors, and the could is the key word. It's not saviors. The could is the key word. So the things that they could be doing with their wealth and power that they're not doing. So how do they want to be remembered? If they could be the saviors, like if they could end poverty, if they could end homelessness, if they could solve the climate crisis, if they could do all those things, why are they not doing it? Why are they just accumulating and accumulating and accumulating and not solving humanity's problems? They seem to just be creating more problems.
When I think about people who have wasted opportunities, like Prince Andrew is a good example. There's somebody who's famous for being born. Now, he's not a billionaire, okay?
Right.
But he was given lots of wealth, lots of privilege, and a lot of power. And he could have gone out there and, I don't know, build a better chocolate factory or done something something like on the order of Princess Diana. Not that she was a saint either. I think she's become a saint, and she wasn't. But she did try to do some good with the opportunities that she had.
Right.
And instead, he got involved with that goofball Epstein. And it just, and from what I understand, I've been following some of the British media on this. He's really been so sheltered. He doesn't even realize how stupid he is, and how what a waste of opportunity. He could have done so much good in the world with those opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I see that I see that with billionaires as well, that they're in a bubble. They are in a completely different reality than we are. And that's where it comes back to the psychedelics, is breaking down that barrier and making them feel like they are actually part of us, that they are connected to us. They are not above or separate from us.
Yes. I would agree with you. I absolutely would agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you at all in this, but I think there is another dimension to this. If you look at what happened to Michael Jackson, if you looked at Howard Hughes, he's another example. They became isolated and became put in a false reality, not because of greed necessarily or wanting to rule the world, but their isolation. As we all know, isolation is not good for human beings. And when you can't have had the most basic experience of going to the store and buying a dozen donuts, like Michael Jackson never had, or Howard Hughes became so isolated, and now with Elon Musk, he's got to have all these security guys that are on par with the Secret Service. I would think that that's not healthy.
Yeah.
Through no fault of their own, they've become isolated, and their perception of reality has been warped.
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, absolutely, for sure.
So, maybe if you got an opportunity to talk to him, you go out and disguise somewhere. A lot of people have done that. A lot of those really super people have gone out there.
There was that show, what was it? The Undercover Boss or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, this has been interesting and a great conversation. Let me go back, and I want to make sure I get the title of your book right. They Could Be Saviors, and the author's name is Diana Colleen. Where can people find out more about you? Are you active on social media, or do you have what do you got going on?
Yeah, I'm on most socials. I'm not on X. You can find me Diana Colleen author. My website is dianacolleenauthor.com. I've got an email or newsletter sign up there. If you sign up for my newsletter, you get a download of a discussion guide for the book. So it's great for book clubs. I'll come to your book club via Zoom if you'd like. But even if you're not in a book club, this discussion guide, it's a lot of questions that will really make you think about what you believe related to the themes in the book. And there are a lot of themes in the book besides billionaires and besides psychedelics and besides climate change. There's a lot packed into this book. And I love hearing from my readers, like if you want to shoot me an email with questions or what you think about the book, I would absolutely love to hear from readers. But yeah, and you can find the book pretty much anywhere books are sold. So the big names, Amazon, which it's kind of ironic that I'm selling my book on Amazon. But yeah, it's all the big names, and any indie bookstore, if they don't have it on their shelf, they can order it for you.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of irony out there because, that's the going joke. There's all these progressive young folks talking about how terrible capitalism is and how terrible all these big, large companies are, and they're on their Apple phone on Google drinking their Starbucks coffee.
Exactly.
I'll throw you this curveball example. I always try to throw a curveball in, right? Are you now? You're in Washington State, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you a football fan, Seattle, and all that?
I'm a huge Seahawks fan.
Oh, okay. So this is going to be good. Okay, because this is what I'm going to tell you. I think the NFL has the right mix of capitalism and socialism. I really do think that.
Interesting. Okay.
For example, the worst teams get the first round picks. Okay. And there's rules in terms of the salary cap doesn't exist to a lot of people think it's to keep spending. Now, what the salary cap is really for is so that the really successful franchises, let's say the Cowboys, with the most valuable franchise in the world, they can't use all the money to go out into free agency and buy all the best players. Okay.
Right.
So the system is set up in a way that even with if you have a really good year, the following years, you're going to get a more difficult schedule.
Right.
And the reason for that is if, let's say, when the New England Patriots were at the top of their game with Brady, and they were almost hardly ever losing a game all season, if they always got the best players, if they always got all the advantages, they always got a pretty easy schedule, what would happen is all the games would be blowouts.
Yeah,
And
it'd be boring for the viewers. Yeah.
The game would die. There would be no more innovation because the same things would always work by the most dominant teams. There would be no new ideas.
Yeah.
So you have to have a situation where the underdog always has a chance. That's what they say on any given Sunday, right? On any given Sunday, any team can win. Okay. By the same token, they still have enough things in place where you can have a dynasty. You can have a Pittsburgh Steelers. You can have a New England Patriots. You can have a Kansas City. Okay. That ability is still there with how the owners manage their teams, how the coaches coach, the dedication of the players, how their winning culture is cultivated. You still can have a dynasty even with this system, but you have to change. You have to modify. You have to innovation. You can't just rely on what worked last year because you're going to be up against other things because of this system. So does that help? Is that a good analogy? Is that something you can use with your sports friends?
I think it's great. Thank you. Yeah, I love that.
Okay. They've done a good job of that balancing act. I think
Same with F1. Do you follow F1?
No, I don't know what that is.
Formula One racing?
I know. I don't follow. No, I
Okay.
don't follow racing.
Same kind of thing. Same kind of thing with that. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
so they've changed all the rules for 2026. They have new cars. It's a new system in the car so that everyone kind of started at the same. This season, everyone's back to where nobody knows what's going on and nobody knows who's going to win this year because it's all different. So, yes, it's a really exciting year because nobody knows what's going to happen.
Well, those are the best kind. Those are the best kind. Diana, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I hope you can come back anytime. You have a very kind soul, not necessarily in the spiritual sense, but your personality. I think the world needs more people like you. We wouldn't have to impose so many regulations on morality if we had people that were sensitive. And empathy is a hard thing to learn. It is a hard thing to learn. And we, getting back to the addiction crisis and some of the other things that we've gone through, when this first started, there was a lot of people that make some very cold statements about people who had addiction. And that's starting to change because, quite frankly and sadly, in Ohio in particular, just about everybody has been impacted by it. And it's always different when it's your kid,
Exactly.
And I always say, if I could give a message to the world is learn empathy. Learn understanding without waiting for the time until it strikes you.
Yes.
And I'm a firm, believer in that. I think that if you put your mind to it, you can put yourself where somebody else is. I also don't believe that you have to go through something to be able to understand it. I don't believe that's true at all.
Right.
I think that's a misnomer. Yeah. Just because somebody went through what you went through doesn't mean they're going to be any more empathetic to it. The key is having that caring side of your nature. If you can, we've all felt pain. We've all felt disappointment, sadness. And if you can put yourself in that situation with another person, that is what matters. What the circumstances are that brought it about is immaterial. If you can put yourself there. And I wish more people were able to do that. So I have no doubt that you have that. I can sense it talking to you. And I hope more people realize that, Diana. And I hope you can come back anytime you want.
Well, thank you so much. I look forward to coming back. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I would really love to come back. So thank you.
Awesome. My name is Billy Dees. You can find the Billy Dees Podcast just about anywhere podcasts are found. We are on all the major podcast networks. Over a 10-year history now. Hard to believe it. The podcast in its current form. And we've been doing this longer than that, but in its current form, it's over 10 years old now. So really easy to find. Social media. Diana's not going to like this, but you can find me on X. I do believe that the pros to X are the trending aspect of it. There's a lot of times when news actually breaks on X. It actually happens on X. What's his name? Joe Biden announced that he wasn't going to run on X. So I think it has that, and it's always been the Twitter aspect. When it was Twitter, has always tied in really well with podcasting for that reason. But you can find me on the other platforms too. We're on all of them. Thank you very much for listening to our show today, and we will talk to you again very, very soon.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees Podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X @BillyDees for updates about the program.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy Dees Podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy Dees Podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.